It's no secret that Rory McIlroy is one of the best drivers of this generation. He consistently tops the leaderboards in terms of driving distance as well as strokes gained off the tee. So in this video, we're going to look at the details of Rory McIlroy's driver swing, talk about what allows him to be so dominant with the driver, and what you can mimic in Rory's swing to become a better driver of the golf ball. Let's start off with McIlroy's setup. I've always considered this to be a very athletic setup, slight bend in the knees. One thing that is pretty notable about Rory's swing is he doesn't have an incredibly wide base. He has a fairly narrow base compared to a lot of other golfers on the PGA Tour. Now, one thing that I do want to note in this setup, which is something that's very subtle but super important, is how his toes are a bit flared out, meaning that the toes come out a little bit further past where those heels are. If you are parallel with both of your feet, you're actually restraining a little bit of that rotation that you can get in the hips. So just flaring out your front and back toe a little bit will free up your hip flexors and allow for just a little bit more rotation. This is something super simple that a lot of people overlook, but the implementation of this simple tip can really help you free up your golf swing, especially through transition. Now let's take a look at the takeaway. This is a nice wide takeaway. It's all arms in this takeaway. There's not a lot of hands and wrists. A lot of golfers who tend to be a little bit less consistent with the driver, especially golfers who tend to slice the ball, it's because they take that club away immediately with the hands and wrists. This puts the club face in a difficult position right off the bat, whereas if you use your arms and you keep the triangle in that golf swing, the triangle between the line of your chest and your two arms, then that's going to allow a much more repeatable swing. It's also going to be conducive to better extension throughout the golf swing. Speaking of extension, look at the top of Rory's backswing. That left arm is fully extended. The bottom of that club is way past the back shoulder. This is incredible rotation here from Rory at the top of the backswing. One thing to note about Rory's move through transition here is that the hands are actually fairly low. If you see his hands are barely above the top of his cap, a lot of golfers will have that club well above the top of their cap. Justin Thomas has pretty high hands. Ricky Fowler has some lower hands, but it doesn't matter where those hands are as long as you can shallow out through the ball. And if we're looking at a shallowing move with the driver, I don't think that there is any better shallowing move to look at than that of Rory McIlroy with driver in hand. Now, the plane that Rory takes it away on is a very standard plane, maybe a little bit wider than normal, but the plane that he comes at the ball is way lower. He is very much underplaned through transition, and because of that shallowing move, Rory's going to have an in to out club path, and that is very conducive to hitting a draw. Rory with driver will almost always turn to a high draw unless the hole requires him to hit a fade. Now, it is important to note that generally across all golf shots, if you are going to hit a draw, that shot is going to go notably longer than if you hit a fade because of the way that that club interacts with the ball and the way that club path comes through the ball. So if you're simply looking to just add a few yards to your drives and you're currently hitting a fade but you want to switch over to a draw, in switching over to a draw, you are going to gain yardages. Now, this is also important to note with irons. If you have your distances set in, say you hit a 9-iron 135, you hit an 8-iron 145, but you fade those clubs, if you turn to the draw, your distance control is going to be a little bit off. So just be sure that when you're hitting a draw, you account for the ball going longer. Obviously, with driver, you don't really need to account for the ball going a ton longer because the goal with your driver is to hit it in the fairway and get it down there as far as possible, as long as there's no bunkering or other water features that will prevent you from doing so. But back to Rory's swing. This shallowing move puts him in prime position. The shallowing move is started by the unwinding of those hips, and you can also see him do a very athletic move here where he squats down. You see that left knee bend down, and what this allows him to do is begin the leveraging of the ground. That left knee clears way for the hips and the upper body to unwind, and then right before impact, that left knee completely straightens out. He pushes off the ground, and when that left knee is fully extended, that left leg fully extended at impact, he has no choice but to just let everything else come through the ball. It's like a whip coming through the ball because there's so much potential energy, and then when he fully leverages the ground right before impact, all of that potential energy becomes energy in motion, or kinetic energy. One thing that I'll always note about Rory's swing is how balanced he is. When have you ever seen Rory McIlroy hit a driver and he doesn't stick that follow through? Unless he hits a really horrible shot and he drops his club or has some kind of adverse reaction, he's always so balanced. And although he is swinging the club very, very hard, he always stays within himself. So that's something always to note. No matter what your tempo does, no matter how hard you're trying to swing at the ball, how hard you're trying to hit the ball, make sure that you're staying balanced through the entire motion. Because if you lose your balance, you're losing your low point control, and you're losing the very consistency that makes any good golfer a good ball striker. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the driver swing of Rory McIlroy. Obviously, as I said earlier, generational talent. Whenever he's playing his best golf, it's generally a result of him being super dialed in with the big stick. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the swing, and if you have any questions on things that I mentioned in this video or failed to mention, leave them in the comment section down below. As always, I appreciate you very much for watching. Play well, and take care.